ولبنان في طبيعته مدينة ذكية في الطبيعة. النشيد الوطني اللبناني وقوفا إذا بتريدوا وإنشادا. أهلا وسهلا، تفضلوا. أول شيء رح بلش الاحتفال بكلمة شكر وجهها لدولة رئيس مجلس الوزراء السيد سعد الحريري لأجل تكليل هذا مؤتمر المدن الذكية بتكليف تمثيله للأستاذ نزيه نجم رئيس لجنة الأشغال النيابية، وهذا شغلة مميزة. بأول عهد مجلس النواب تكون معنا لجنة الأشغال النيابية في نقابة المهندسين، يعني في تكاتف، في تضامن، في تضافر جهود، في رؤية ممكن نحقق سوا. كما بدي رحب بنائب عماد وكيم الزميل العزيز يلي له بصمات كبيرة بنقابة المهندسين بتاريخ سابق، بالنقيب صبحي البساط، بالنقباء وجميع الرسميين، وخاصة ممثلي القوات المسلحة بكل قياداتها. شكرا جزيلا. الكلمات الحقيقية لا تفي الموضوع حقه، والكلمات القليلة تفرض ذاتها. لأجل ذلك أنقل لكم وصيتي أن لا تتكلموا كثيرا، بل فلنفعل أكثر، لأن شجرة لا تعرف إلا من ثمرها، والثمر لا نتيجة يأتي بها بالكلمات إنما بالحياة. المدن الذكية ليست حقيقة فحسب، إنما هي من الإنسان، فالإنسان هو الذي يحول الحجارة إلى قيمة مضافة. الإنسان هو المحور، فلا تفاعل مثلا في الغابات مع التكنولوجيا، ولا تنافس في الأكوان بين المجرات، إنما الإنسان حيثما وجد يصنع شيئا جديدا. شو صاير؟ وعليه أن ننتبه لنحترم المعايير في أبعادها حتى الرابع والخامس والسادس. وكي لا أطيل الكلام كما أوصيت، أقول أن معيار قياس حضارة الشعوب لا يتوقف على ما يتقدم به من تطور آلي، إنما ما يحققه الشعب من ثمار فاعلة قاعدتها الأخلاق، مرتكزاتها القيم، وهدفها الإنسان. حقيقة نحن باللجنة العلمية حضرنا ل4 مؤتمرات، هلأ أكيد في كلمات رح تشرح كل القصة، ولكن المدن الذكية كان لي حصة فيها بلجنة. بدي وجه شكر خاص لدكتور تمام نقاش، دكتورة دينا زيدان، ولزميل جوزيف سعد. كما بدي وجه شكر كتير خاص للزميل وسام الطويل اللي هو رئيس اللجنة العلمية، يلي معه برهنا انه مش اللجنة الفرعية عم بتحضر الشغل بتكون لوحدها عم تشتغل، بس بنكون كلنا عم نتكاتف تنعمل شغل حلو. صهر معنا، تعب يمكن اوقات اكثر منا، وانا زلمه بحفظ الفضل والجميل وبعرف وصله بوقته اللازم. الكلمة الأولى معنا لرئيس اللجنة العلمية الزميل وسام الطويل، تفضل.
مساء الخير. حضرة رئيس مجلس الوزراء السيد سعد الحريري راعي الاحتفال، ممثلا بسعادة رئيس لجنة الأشغال النيابية نزيه نجم، سعادة النائب عماد وكيم، حضرات ممثلي القوى الأمنية والعسكرية، حضرات رؤساء اتحاد البلديات ورؤساء البلديات، أيها الحضور الكريم، نرحب بكم في المؤتمر الثاني الذي تنظمه اللجنة العلمية في نقابة المهندسين في بيروت بعنوان المدن الذكية. سوف نناقش خلال يومين بوجود خبراء من فرنسا وإسبانيا وسويسرا، إستونيا والإمارات العربية المتحدة، الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية ولبنان، مبادئ المدن الذكية وتطبيقاتها. وسوف نطرح الإشكاليات التالية، وهي: هل بإمكان مدننا اللبنانية أن تصبح ذكية بالرغم من وجود مصاعب ومشاكل عدة، من بنى تحتية مهترئة إلى مشاكل الكهرباء والمياه والمواصلات والاتصالات؟ كيف من الممكن تخطي هذه المصاعب الشائكة حيث تصبح مدننا وبلداتنا قابلة للحياة والتطور، وذلك عبر مواصلات فعالة وسريعة، وكفاءة عالية للطاقة والمياه، وإدارة فعالة للنفايات، وحوكمة إلكترونية متطورة؟ كيف يمكننا استعمال الحساسات وتكنولوجيا الاتصالات والتكنولوجيا الرقمية لتجميع المعلومات وتحليلها واستعمالها لزيادة الكفاءة والإنتاجية؟ ماذا يتطلب لتصبح بيروت مثل نيس في فرنسا، وطرابلس مثل برشلونة في إسبانيا، وزحلة مثل تارتو في إستونيا؟ كلنا أصبح على يقين أنه لا ينقصنا العلم أو المعرفة أو المال أو الخبرات التقنية، بل ينقصنا الإرادة السياسية. لذلك نحن بحاجة لأبطال تريد تغيير الواقع وتستطيع تخطي العوائق مهما كانت صعبة. لذلك على البلديات أن لا تنتظر الحلول من الدولة المركزية، بل عليها أن تبادر على وضع استراتيجيتها الذاتية لنقل المدينة والبلدة من مستوى إلى آخر ضمن خطة ذكية وطويلة الأمد، حيث تستخدم التكنولوجيا الحديثة لحياة ذات كفاءة أعلى وإنتاجية أكبر. نتمنى أن يفتح هذا المؤتمر الحوار والنقاش العلمي نحو غد أفضل، وإلى اللقاء في 26 و 27 شباط 2019 في المؤتمر الثالث عن الذكاء الاصطناعي والثورة الرقمية وتأثيرها على الاقتصاد. I greatly thank our guest speakers for their participation in this conference, passing through the hardship of traveling to share with us their experience and knowledge. Their presence is highly appreciated, and we are looking forward to their valuable presentation and speeches. Thank you.
مع كل نقيب وفي عهد كل نقيب كان لنا جولات في العلم والثقافة والمعرفة الهندسية، ومع النقيب الحالي جات لنا خصوصية أخرى مختلفة عن كثيرين نقدمه بها نائب المهندسين. تفضل، كلمة لإلك.
منيح. دولة رئيس مجلس وزراء السيد سعد الحريري ممثلا بالنائب نزيه نجم، حضرات أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، حضرات ممثلي القوات المسلحة والمجلس البلدية، حضرات النقراء السابقون وأعضاء مجلس النقابة والأعضاء السابقون، سيداتي وسادتي، أيها الحضور الكريم. المدن الذكية عنوان كبير من العناوين التي لاحظتها سلسلة المؤتمرات التي تنظمها نقابة المهندسين، والتي تواكب التطور التكنولوجي العالمي بمفاهيمه العلمية. وهنا لا بد لي إلا أن أثني على الدور الذي تقوم به اللجنة العلمية برئاسة الزميل وسام طويل لهذا التفاعل العلمي النوعي الذي نحتاج إليه في هذه المرحلة العصيبة التي تمر على بلدنا. غالبا ما يفسر مفهوم المدينة الذكية على أنها المدينة التي تستخدم تكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات من أجل تحسين جودة الخدمات الحضرية وتقليل التكاليف. بهذا المعنى فإن المدينة الذكية هي منطقة حضرية تستخدم أجهزة مختلفة لجمع المعلومات والبيانات الإلكترونية ومعالجتها وتحليلها من أجل إدارة الموارد والأنظمة بشكل فعال. ويشمل ذلك ربط المكونات المتنوعة بواسطة الإنترنت وأجهزة الاستشعار وأجهزة التموضع العالمية مثل الGPS وغيرها. لكن مفهوم المدن الذكية هو في الحقيقة أوسع من ذلك، إذ أنه يقع على تقاطع مفاهيم متعددة كمفهوم مدينة المعرفة ومدينة المعلومات والمدينة الرقمية والمدينة الخضراء والمدينة المستدامة إلى آخره. فالمدينة الذكية لا تهدف فقط إلى إدارة الأنظمة المدنية بشكل فعال، بل هي تهدف إلى استخدام التكنولوجيا لإجراء تحول جذري في البيئة الحضرية يكون له تأثيرا مباشرا على كافة أوجه الحياة المدنية، ولا سيما السكن والتنقل وشروط العمل والاقتصاد والأمن والحوكمة، بما في ذلك المشاركة في اتخاذ القرارات المتعلقة بالسياسة العامة. ويهدف هذا التحول إلى تحسين نوعية الحياة وشروط العيش لسكان المدن، بما في ذلك الأشخاص الذين يعانون من حالات ضعف كالمرضى والمسنين والأشخاص المعوقين وذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة. وتسعى المدينة الذكية إلى التوفيق بين الركائز الاجتماعية والثقافية والبيئية من خلال نهج نظامي يجمع بين الحوكمة التشاركية والإدارة المستنيرة للموارد الطبيعية لتلبية احتياجات المواطنين وتأمين شروط التنمية المستدامة. وفي ظل التنافس الشديد بين المدن في عصر العولمة، سعت الكثير من المدن لاعتماد نموذج المدن الذكية، بدءا بمدينة برشلونة وستوكهولم ويوكوهاما ومدينتي أوزان وسونغدو في كوريا الجنوبية وغيرها. وفي العام 2015 أعلنت 143 مدينة أعلنت نفسها 143 مدينة بأنها ذكية، وتوزعت هذه المدن بالتساوي بين أمريكا الشمالية وأوروبا وآسيا، بينما تسعى مدن أخرى في أمريكا اللاتينية وأفريقيا للانضمام إلى القائمة. ويمكن تصنيف المدن الذكية وفقا ل5 معايير رئيسية، استنادا إلى نظريات التنافس الإقليمية واقتصاديات النقل وتكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات والموارد الطبيعية والبنى التحتية ورأس المال البشري والاجتماعي ونوعية الحياة وشروط العيش لسكان المدن ومشاركة المواطنين في الحياة الديمقراطية للمدينة. وتندرج هذه المعايير ال5 كالآتي: أولا، النقل والحركة الذكية، وذلك من خلال دمج وسائل النقل المختلفة كالسكك الحديدية ووسائل النقل الجماعية والسيارات الخاصة والمسارات السلسة وممرات المشاة في نظام واحد صديق للبيئة يتميز بالكفاءة وسهولة الوصول وبأسعار معقولة. ويتيح هذا الدمج إلى التقليل من تلوث الهواء وتخفيض البصمة الكربونية وتوفير مجموعة واسعة من حلول التنقل لتلبية جميع احتياجات سكان المدن. ثانياً، الإدارة الذكية للنظم المدنية، بما في ذلك إدارة شبكات البنى التحتية ومراكز المعلومات ونظم الاتصالات وخدمات الطوارئ والمرافق العامة من مدارس ومستشفيات ومؤسسات عامة وغيرها. ثالثاً، البيئة المستدامة، ويشمل هذا المحور إدارة فرز ومعالجة النفايات وإنشاء نظم فعالة لاستعادة النفايات وتحويلها، كما يشمل كيفية إنتاج وتوزيع الطاقة واختيار مصادر الطاقة المتجددة والنظيفة التي تحترم البيئة. رابعاً، التحضر المسؤول والإسكان الذكي. إن ارتفاع أسعار العقارات في وسط المدن بالإضافة إلى تزايد السكان في المدن بسبب الهجرة الريفية تطرح مشاكل عديدة أمام التطور الحضري. فنموذج الامتداد المديني غير المنضبط لم يعد يتلائم مع شروط الاستدامة بسبب كلفته الباهظة بالنسبة للبنى التحتية وتوفير المرافق العامة وتوزيع الطاقة. وقد أصبح من الضروري ابتكار أشكال حضرية جديدة تسمح بزيادة الكثافة السكانية للحد من التمدد المديني، لكنها تسمح في نفس الوقت بتحسين شروط العيش ونوعية الحياة لسكان المدن. خامساً، الحوكمة الرشيدة ومشاركة السكان في الحياة الديمقراطية، ويشمل ذلك الإجراءات والعمليات التي يتم من خلالها توجيه النظم المدنية وتحديد الحقوق والمسؤوليات وتأمين أطر الرقابة المتوازنة، مما يساهم في تحسين شروط الأداء الاقتصادي والاستثماري للشركات، بالإضافة إلى تعزيز ثقافة المسؤولية والمساءلة، مما يعزز الممارسة الديمقراطية لسكان المدن. أيها الحضور الكريم، لقد عملنا في نقابة المهندسين في بيروت وفي اتحاد المهندسين اللبنانيين من خلال اللجنة العلمية والفروع والروابط على تنظيم ورش متخصصة بالاتصالات والتكنولوجيا، لأننا نعي أن استخدام التكنولوجيا المعلومات والاتصالات يساهم في إيجاد حلول مبتكرة لقضايا مثل الاستدامة الحضرية والمياه والكهرباء والنقل. وخلصنا في التوصيات المتعددة لورش الاتصالات في النقابة إلى ضرورة التشجيع على الابتكار والريادة والإنتاجية وتعزيز البنية التحتية الذكية للنقل العام والاتصالات والحماية من التلوث وإدارة الموارد الاقتصادية، فضلا عن الاستثمار بالإنسان والحياة الذكية التي تشمل الثقافة والصحة والسكن والأمن والخدمات العامة. لن أطيل عليكم، لكنني لا يسعني إلا أن أتقدم من راعي هذا المؤتمر دولة رئيس مجلس الوزراء سعد الحريري بكل تقدير على الاهتمام والرعاية، وأشكر المنظمين والمحاضرين والحضور. Bienvenue à nos hôtes étrangers. Merci de votre présence ici et merci de votre participation à ce colloque. Merci.
بدي رحب بأستاذ فانوس بولس مدير عام وزارة الأشغال، أستاذ نبيل عتاني رئيس مجلس إدارة. إنها لحظة جديرة ومن دواعي سروري أن أقدم لكم من على منبر نقابة المهندسين في بيروت الصديق العزيز النائب الأستاذ نزيه نجم رئيس لجنة الأشغال النيابية ممثلا رئيس مجلس الوزراء السيد سعد الحريري. تفضل، بدنا منك كلمة من القلب للقلب.
مساء خير نائب، حضرات الأهل بدنا نقول والأصدقاء. شرفتني دولة الرئيس أني مثله اليوم، وأنا عندي اليوم صفتين الحقيقة لكون قريب منكم. أول صفة أني عم مثل دولة الرئيس وهيدي الأحب على قلبي، والصفة الثانية أني رئيس لجنة الأشغال طاقة المياه والنقل، فافتكر نحن بنكمل بعض اليوم. ذكرت أستاذ راشد على تحويل الحجر إلى قيمة مضافة، وأنا جاي من هالقطاع بالذات، قطاع الحجر، ونحن بنعرف إنه أنتم بتحولوا الرسم إلى يعني بدع فنية وإلى جمال طبيعي وجمال حقيقي. أكيد اليوم المؤتمر يعني أول كل شيء ما فينا إلا ما نرفع التحية بالنسبة للمدن الذكية ولمستقبل العالم إذا بدنا نقول، الثروة الرقمية يلي هي صارت المستقبل كله، واللي نحن حريصين على كحكومة وكنواب وكلجان إنه نوقف حدكم فيها ونشد على إيدك نقيب حتى نوصل ونسمع أكثر وإذا بدك نوقف إلى جانبكم بشكل حقيقي. نحن بتيار المستقبل عم نحضر مشاريع كثيرة تصب بهذه الخانة وتصب بتطوير بالمستقبل الاقتصادي والعمراني والانفراستراكشر بالبلد. فبفتكر نحن وياكم ماشيين على طريق وحده، مع انه انا والنائب مختلفين ببعض الامور التجميليه، بس بدنا نلاقي حل بيني وبينه. وبدنا نلاقي حل حتى كمان نظهر المدن اللي نحن عم نسعى انه نعملها بالمظهر الاجمل. مش هيك متفقين نحن وياه؟ ان شاء الله خير. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا استاذ نزيه. رح ننتقل دغري من دون بريك، دغري بننتقل للمحور الاول ونسمع مع دكتور فادي عطله. تفضل. تفضل.
Hello everyone. Our first speaker tonight is Mr. Fadi Atallah. Fadi is an accomplished global IBM executive with extensive experience in digital transformation, planning, strategy, and execution. Prior to joining IBM, Fadi was the leader of Cisco's Smart Plus Connected Communities consulting practice and one of the founding members of the Smart Plus Connected Communities and IoT initiatives at Cisco. He is the thought leader behind the ICT master planning methodology that is enabling Cisco to help transform cities around the world. Fadi has been working with industry and government leaders on every continent for the last 10 years, including countries like China, Russia, and Brazil, as well as in the Middle East. He has over 20 years of diverse global technology experience, delivering a compelling track record of success as an executive and a business consultant to Fortune 500 companies. He has also mentored and worked with many startups and has been a successful entrepreneur himself. Fadi is a futurist and a thought leader in many areas of technology. And he will be talking to us tonight about what takes a city to become smart. Please help me in welcoming Fadi.
Thank you very much for that great introduction. I don't have a clicker. We just went through some tense moments trying to get the slides to appear. And I think that the rest of the speakers are just as relieved as I am to see this appear on the screen right now. So just waiting for the clicker. So that being said, I'm not your traditional type of speaker. I think that this is going to be a little bit different from what we just heard. And I want to thank everybody else for taking their time so that we can get this to work. Make sure to not cause any echo. So thank you very much for inviting me, for all the organizing committee to having invited me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I haven't been back to Lebanon in a few years. I'm, of course, originally Lebanese. But at the age of 4, we left. We immigrated to Canada. And I've lived there until 12 years ago, until I relocated to Dubai. And I've been in Dubai ever since. And I must say, it's actually very nice to be here when the weather is good. And it's beautiful outside, which is a little bit of a contrast to what you've had recently. I've heard you've had some bouts with weather recently, some storms where waterfalls magically appeared out of mountains. I saw that video, I don't know if that was real. Or waterfalls appeared in streets, which is also something unique. So it makes us think sometimes, right? Are we ready as a country and as cities to deal with these types of situations? And that's not always the case, right? And as smart cities, we need to be ready. And then we need to think about, from an infrastructure perspective, can we handle it? What do we need to do to alleviate the burden on citizens when this happens? And then I gravitate naturally to why these things happen, right? And I think about, is this about global warming or is it about climate change? These things seem to be happening more often. And we need to start to think about that because this introduces, to me at least, one of the main topics why we are pushing forward and so hard to transform our cities into smart cities, and that's sustainable development. Right? We need to understand how to continue to grow our cities and continue to evolve as humans while making sure that we don't destroy the planet while we're doing it. So I think that we've recently had a lot of statistics that show we've passed a tipping point, a dangerous one. According to the Global Footprint Network, to sustain our current level of consumption, we would need 1.7 planet Earths to sustain us. Right? That means we're using more resources than the planet can provide. We're leveraging our future to live the way we live today. And really, things could be a lot worse because if we all lived the way they do in the US, we'd need 4.1 planet Earths to sustain us. And in fact, if we all lived the way I do in Dubai, we'd need 5.7 planet Earths to sustain us. So obviously, we do live a life of excess in Dubai, but that's really the case in the Western world and across the Middle East. And we have to start to think about how we can change that. Now, Dubai has done a lot of great things to provide smart services, to make citizens' life easier, but I think that we lack on the conservation side of things. Now, when we talk about sustainable development, there are many things we need to consider, right? Obviously, how we use energy, how we consume the planet's energy without necessarily polluting the air, how we use water, but also food, right? Food is a topic I've dug into a little bit recently. But it's one of the most energy-consuming and resource-consuming thing we can do is grow the food that we need to eat every day. When we talk about depletion of the soils, when we talk about spraying pesticide to damage the soils, we talk about shipping, packaging, distribution. It's very taxing on the world's resources. So knowing all that, the scary thing is that we still waste 33% of the food that we make in the world. That means 33% of the food we produce goes into the garbage, right? It's never consumed. In the US, that's actually as high as 40%. And when we think about 1 billion people, going hungry around the world, that's a little bit disappointing, right? We can definitely do better. And I think we not only waste food, I just think we eat too much. So if you think we eat too much, raise your hand. And I'm saying if you think you eat too much, that's a question I've asked elsewhere that didn't go over very well. But if you think we eat too much, you can raise your hand. The statistics would back you, actually, on that. Because in the US, 35% of the population is considered obese, right? Not overweight, but obese. 100 million people in the US are diabetic or pre-diabetic. That's type 2, adult onset. This is lifestyle diseases, right? It's related to what we eat and the quality of how much we eat. Also that we don't move, right? These are the things that are happening today. Now, I use the US as a reference because they have good statistics, really, but it's not much better everywhere else in the world. In fact, it's a lot worse in UAE, where I'm from. And I can also make the statement that we eat too much because I'm standing here 2 days fasted talking to you. Okay? That means I haven't eaten anything except water for 2 days. It's controversial, right? And I'm not falling over, and I'm not weak. In fact, it's quite the contrary. So I say this because, to a certain extent, I want to be controversial. I want to be thought-provoking. I want us to question the status quo. Right? I think that I am talking to the intellectual elite of the country here. Right? We have engineers and architects. Please raise your hand if you're an engineer or an architect. There you go. So if we were to add doctors and lawyers, I think we'd have all of the thinkers in this country covered. Perhaps some politicians as well. We can debate that. But ultimately, you are the thinkers, right? For example, that's a great example because they have been the bastion of all innovation across the world for the last 20, 30 years, most of the innovation across the world. Most of the big cities, big companies today came from Silicon Valley. A lot of innovation is happening there. Why? Because they question the status quo. Right? They don't accept things as they are. They wonder how they should be. Right? They want to make things better and they want to change things for the better. And that's what creates innovation. So if I can stimulate that a little bit here for you and for the next generation, right, your children, then that's definitely an accomplishment, because that's how we're going to create innovation in this country, and that's how we're going to move forward as a society. The other reason I talk about sustainable development is very close to my heart, because I've become more green since living in Dubai. I don't mean my complexion, because that wouldn't be healthy, but just greener in terms of conservation. And I think that cities will have a tremendous impact on sustainable development in the future, on what happens to our planet in the future. And the reason is very simple: urbanization. Right? 2010, 51% of the population of the world lived in cities. Right? By 2050, it'll be over 70%. And by then, we'll be 10 billion people on the planet. So that means in the next 30 years or so, we have to accommodate 2.5 billion people in our existing cities or in new cities. Now, some people don't have the luxury of creating new cities. Some do. If you go to China and India, they are creating a lot of new cities. But they also have 500 million people to urbanize in the next 10 to 20 years. So they're doing good things, right? They're doing things the right way, in the sense that they know that we have finite resources, and they know that we have to use them effectively to continue moving forward and not depleting the resources we have now in a sustainable way. So that's a ways off, because new cities being built don't get completed for years, but they are doing the right things. So sustainable development, I think, is the main driver of why we need to be successful in smart cities, but there are others. And now I will discover if this slide works, and it does. Very good. Thank you, guys. Excellent. So there are many others, other aspects that technology can affect in the city. A lot of them probably some way, shape, or form relate to sustainable development, but it's about improving our lives in general in the city. We talk about traffic and transit management. So traffic management is a big issue. We talk about public safety and how technology can affect public safety in our cities. And these are, of course, a subset of some of the solutions that we offer as an organization at IBM. But there are many others. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about these in particular, about the point solutions, because I think a lot of my colleagues will be talking about these in the following sessions. I would rather spend a little more time talking about what it takes for a city to be smart. So what we need to do to successfully transform into a smart city first and foremost. And then I want to talk about what technology enables in a smart city. So what does a smart city need to provide or to enable to actually become an effective smart city? So if we look at the first slide, what do we do first? What to do first, right? And this first one seems like it's pretty straightforward. It's to plan, right? But it's a lot less prevalent than we think in the city space. So my point here is that I visited a lot of cities around the world, and I've spoken to a lot of leadership around the world, and very seldom do they have a plan to execute against on how to become smart. Right? They have aspirations, they have vision, but they don't have a plan. And that's a challenge. Right? It's difficult to be successful if you don't have a plan. So step one should be preparing that plan. And I always tell the story to kind of bring it home. How many of you have children here? Some of you younger, older children? Okay, so keep your hand up if you have young children. Okay, so usually I can tell who has young children because you're the most tired and sleep deprived. I have 4 children under the age of 12. So I haven't slept since 2010. But really, that's not really true because I sleep when I travel and my wife hates me for it. But the reality is, my son taught me a nice lesson one time. I was playing with him on the carpet in the living room. This is my firstborn, and he was a little under 2 years old, so he would still crawl and walk a little bit. We had all his toys around the room. So as we were playing with cars or whatever it was, he actually got up and walked over to his toys, picked up a bag, and brought it back to me, a Ziploc bag. And it was full of pieces of a puzzle. So I said, okay, that's good. Let's do a puzzle together, right? So we took the bag, we emptied it, and we started building a puzzle together. Well, actually, I was building it. He was only 2. So I started building this puzzle, and I realized, wow, this is really difficult because I didn't have the picture, right? So somebody had thrown away the box. I'm not saying, my wife brilliantly decided to keep the pieces in a Ziploc bag, which would allow us to play with the puzzle again. But without that picture, I don't know what value that was because it was very difficult to put together. Now, how many of you have tried to put together a puzzle, right? Without the picture? Keep your hand up, okay? So how difficult was that, right? To me, it was impossible because I stopped. I quit. After 20, 25 minutes, I said, listen, this is not going to work. Let's play with something else. I had succeeded in putting some pieces of the puzzle together, but really I couldn't complete it. Now, granted, those pieces were a little small, probably not appropriate for a 2-year-old, but that's not the point, right? The reality is that when I was doing this and I couldn't succeed and I stopped, it dawned on me that this is exactly what city leaders are doing around the world. Right? They're trying to build an extremely complex puzzle without seeing the picture, ever. Right? And this is the importance of planning and having a strategy and a technology blueprint and a roadmap that tells you, what you're going to deploy over the next 5, 10 years in terms of technology, why you're doing it, what services that will support, what it will cost you, what it will bring you in terms of benefit, how that all ties together to the underlying infrastructure that you want to put in place. So these are all important things that we need to have that most cities don't have, unfortunately. And doing that puzzle actually brought it home for me. So a mayor today would get given pieces of puzzle of technology that he knows fit in the overall puzzle, but he doesn't know where, right? So we go ahead with Wi-Fi, for example, or Wi-Fi mesh, or we go ahead with an ERP software. We go ahead with a parking solution or with a water management solution. Or all of these things, he gets given these pieces of technology, and he knows he needs to implement them, but he doesn't know how they all come together. And he doesn't know how the synergy will be created, and doesn't know the underlying technology that will enable them. He just knows that they are part of the puzzle. So what we need to do is really paint that picture. And 12 years ago, when we started working with cities, that's what we started doing, engaging in a strategic way to paint that picture for those cities. And we called it the ICT Master Plan. Right? I think the term stuck because everybody understands what a master plan is. Right? In the physical world, we wouldn't do anything without a master plan. I'm in a room full of architects and engineers, I think you understand that. In the technology world, we tend to do mostly everything without really a master plan or a plan. So that was the key awakening for me, at least, to understand what we need to do first is really plan. The next step, after you do have this wonderful picture of the puzzle and your plan to move forward that you can execute against, you need to do something right after that, I would say, and that's empower. Right? What a great word, empower. So we often miss at this stage, right? Because what I quickly realized that you really need to put the right people in place and empower them to execute on your plan, even if you do have a good plan. Now, I say that, let me give you a story that kind of brings it home. In 2008, we had a project in Sao Paulo. And I flew to Sao Paulo, which was quite impressive. Have anybody been to Sao Paulo? Wow, a few people. It's an impressive city, right? It's a sprawling metropolis, 20 million plus. It is daunting, though, because they have a lot of issues. Two things they wanted to solve for very quickly. One was traffic, right? Because if you think Lebanon traffic is bad, you should go visit Sao Paulo. You'll feel much better about the traffic you have here. It takes 2 hours to get from anywhere, to and from. When we go there as executives, we schedule 2 meetings only, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And if we get to them, we're already lucky. So they had that challenge. Traffic was really a big mess. They also have the problem of crime, security. Right? It's not a safe city. I got really a good impression of that when I was traveling in the car next to our local representative, or our account executive there, to visit the customer. And it was a beautiful day, so I decided to open the window, like I often do, to breathe fresh air. Not that it was that fresh, but at least to breathe outside air. And he immediately closed the window back up. And I said, so what's the problem? He said, no, you cannot open your window in Sao Paulo. Even though we were in CBD, Central Business District, where it seemed safe, he said, you can't do that because somebody's going to come up to you and put a knife to your throat and rob you or take your wallet. Right? It happens without even you noticing. So that's how bad it was. And I said, okay, so they have real issues. So that's not the point of the story. I mean, the city is impressive and they have their issues. But what the mayor did right there was that he structured his organization in a way that will allow him to be successful. So when we got there, we started dealing with one group, first of all, only one. But traditionally, when we started engaging with cities, we would deal with kind of a committee, a stakeholder in every department, to say that, and plus one person, which was probably more of a project manager than being responsible for the Smart City Initiative. So it was very difficult because they were leading by consensus, which is quite difficult to do. So when we started dealing with one organization, which was refreshing, right? They built an organization called PRODAM at the time, and they put a CEO in place. His name is Joao Octaviano. I remember he has a couple of other names, but those are the ones I remember. He was a very good IT person, and he was the president of PRODAM. He was empowered to deliver because all of the IT of every other department was pulled out and put into that organization. And the budgets coming from those departments was all put into that organization as well. So he was empowered to actually deliver, which was great. We really worked well, and we were able to build the master plan for them, or parts of the master plan because of that. Now, that to me brought it home, because from then on in our ICT master plan, we made sure that the reference structure in the city to be able to deliver on a smart city vision, or on a smart city plan, was that indeed. So it was, we need to put a structure in place, we need to empower that structure, and we need to give them budgets and make sure that they can execute. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Okay, so those are the two things we need to do first to be successful. Now, next, I want to talk about what we need to do, or what a city needs to enable. That's the title. What a smart city enables in terms of technology. So I'm not being specific about any solution, but this is what a smart city needs to enable in the future if we do it right. And I'm going to go top down here. The first one is recognize and locate. So what we need is for our city to recognize us, right? And this is pretty easy to do now because we're all carrying a smartphone, right? And we're all connected, and we can easily be recognized and located to a certain extent. So the city can provide you services that you need based on your location and the context that you're in. So ID management is a big deal in cities, right? You are a unique user for every department, probably. I think in most cities that's the case. So what I mean by that is if you go to pay taxes, the city has a identification for you, a user ID for you. If you go to renew your driver's license, or to pay your fines, or to pay a traffic violation, that's another user ID for you in a different department, and they're not usually common. If you go anywhere else in any other department, they have their own function, right? Their own ID management system. So we need to centralize that. We need to figure out a way to understand citizens better and to offer them a more mainstreamed solution. So ID management is key to that. We need to locate and recognize our citizens as a service, right? As an enablement. The next thing we need to do is enable transactions that are a little more seamless and a little easier to process. And I think about that, I mean, honestly, what one situation that comes to mind is registering property. I'm sure a lot of you have done that recently, and the process is quite grueling. Right? It is not an easy thing. It doesn't have to be that complicated. But I'm talking about all transactions that you do in a city, whether it's paying your taxes again, or paying fines, or renting a bike, those common Bixby bikes, or whatever they would call them. Every city are named differently. These are all transactions that can be made easier, and they need to be enabled by the city. So a common transaction platform, and here I'm talking about, of course, based on blockchain. Right? We've all heard about blockchain. How many of you have, this is just out of curiosity, about blockchain? Well, not everybody, okay. So you probably heard of cryptocurrencies, I'm sure, Bitcoin and others. So that's the underlying technology that enables that. Now, while I'm skeptical a little bit about the cryptocurrencies themselves, the technology itself is quite transformational. So this is what we need to start to think about embedding in the fabric of the city, because it's immutable, it's secure, and it's transparent. And transparent usually means less leakage. And in saying less leakage, we mean less corruption, which would be great, right? We can all agree on that. So that's the second thing we need to do. Third thing we need to enable is sensing and control. And here I'm talking about IoT. Right? IoT is a big deal in cities, because this is where we'll see the most impact of IoT. We talk about putting sensors on everything, right? The concept has been accepted widely that everything that can be connected will eventually be connected. And that will happen. And here we're talking about probably 50, 60, 70 billion devices that will be connected in the next 10 years. And that is how we're going to drive that value in the smart city space. Because once we connect these things, we can monitor them, we can manage them remotely, we can start to drive efficiency in the system and operate our cities a lot better. Now that comes with complexities. Complexities are data deluge. You ever heard that expression? Deluge of data. So it's the amount of data that we will start to see once this happens is overwhelming. We already have a lot of data today in the world, right? Let me give you some numbers. Every 2 days, we produce more data in the digital realm than we have from the dawn of time to 2003. Okay, that's a lot of data. And every 2 years, we double the amount of data available in the world. Right? That is really overwhelming. And we need to have a plan on how to manage that data. Right? And today, cities are not equipped for that. I'll talk about that a little bit later, 2 layers down, but it is critical for this element to have that data platform or to have a way to manage that data for sure. The next step, connectivity. So connectivity, here we're talking about connecting people together and assets together. And it essentially means just connecting the city. So this is, don't have to dwell too much on this, but basically it's making sure that we can stay connected at a high speed and we can deliver that connectivity to all assets or all participants in the city, whether it's a bus, a taxi, citizens all over the place, or all the sensors we want to connect. Right? So connectivity is critical. And with existing solutions, we're doing well, right? With 4G or with LoRa or with Wi-Fi, we're doing okay. I think moving forward, 5G is going to be quite interesting from that aspect. So we need to just make sure we provide the right connectivity. And the last one, last but not least, it's actually the most important, that's why I kept it for last, is integration. So when we talk about integration, I'm talking about breaking down the silos. I'm talking about making the departments work together, right? Making a common goal for them to work together. So here, this is something that's typically not what the norm is in cities today. And I spoke about it a little bit earlier. You have these silos. Everybody has their own data, their own goals and mandates, and they're all focused on their own thing. There's very little collaboration that happens in cities from what we've seen. So we need to break that down and create that integration. Again, let me tell you an interesting story that kind of brings that home. So the idea is quite simple, right? We have, I would typically compare that today to aviation, the aviation industry. Right? Do you have any pilots in the room? No pilots, okay, good. So the aviation industry 60 years ago is probably where we are in cities today. I say that because 60 years ago, flying around the world was very complicated. We didn't do it a lot, it was expensive. And this is kind of what pilots were dealing with, right? So this is your traditional cockpit. So we had very little information, we had very little access to information. Today, that's kind of how a mayor runs his city, right? It's looking back, right? The data that he gets is old, and the way that he manages his city is basically with very little information, because he gets a few data points here and there, and he cannot make decisions based on real-time information and real-time data. So let me rewind a little bit and tell you why I say this. I know I've only got 5 minutes left, but I'll try and make it quick. This story relates to Barcelona, really. Because the first engagement we had when we were at Cisco, we did Incheon, which was Songdo, the city of Songdo in Korea. It was the first master plan smart city. It's on reclaimed land, and it was the first really where we were able to put the infrastructure we needed in a city. Now, we failed in other areas, but the second engagement we engaged with 12 years ago was with the city of Barcelona. And there, we put our consultants in place. We put the strategy together for them, at least pieces of the ICT master plan, which is initial pieces, the ICT, the service strategy, of course. And they took a subset of that service strategy, and they have deployed some of these services, some of these solutions in pilots. Right? I don't know if any of you have been to Barcelona or to the Smart City Expo. A few people. Yeah, not the Expo. Oh, so I should separate that question. Right? So the idea is that when we went there, we defined some solutions and they piloted them. So they put them in a subset of the city, a small area of the city, and they piloted some very interesting solutions, like smart parking. So they had a few hundred spots covered by smart parking sensors. They had cameras on the light poles and smart light solutions. So surveillance, security, and also smart lighting. They had transportation solutions. So they had a few bus stops that were smart, with touch panels and information provided. They had a few waste bins, smart waste bins with sensors that would tell you when they're full and when to come and pick them up and stuff. So they optimized that. So these are all interesting things that they did. And they had those pilots going for a few years. And when we went back, and I know you have Antonio here, probably tomorrow can tell you a lot more about this. But when we went back a couple of years later, we sat down with the leadership there. And we said, so you've had these pilots running for 2 years. Why haven't you put anything into production yet? Because we know the technology works. In fact, it's only getting better, right? It's going to get cheaper and better. So why haven't you rolled any of these things out into production? Right? You've got this wonderful bus where people get on and you call it the Smart City Tour, and it's enabled you to have the reputation of being one of the smartest cities in the world, and it's made the Smart City Expo one of the biggest expos for smart cities in the world, but you haven't rolled any of these things out into production. So the answer we got was very interesting. They said that we don't have a means of measuring benefit. So how do you make an investment if you can't measure the return, right? And we were kind of surprised at that. So we said, okay, where's the data, right? Where's the information? They said, we don't have any information. And that kind of, obviously flicked the light on for us, and it says, okay, so we need to do something here where we can get you that information. So we put 3 consultants on the ground, and we partnered with Lloyd, and we did a 3-month project where we went out and we built the business case for these solutions. And the outcome was that the business case was really positive. It made sense to roll out these solutions from a financial perspective, but that wasn't the real revelation. The revelation was that getting the information was just a nightmare. Right? It was like pulling teeth. It's not accessible. Some information was on a spreadsheet. For example, if we wanted to know what kind of revenue was generated in parking in that specific area on any week or any given month, somebody had it on a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, and it wasn't accessible to anybody else. We had to make a call and get that information. Same thing, if you want to find out who was working there to relate the costs to it, who was working that day, what assets were they using, information was almost not available. So this is a challenging environment to work in, right? And that told us that the foundation of our cities today just does not support our endeavor to become smart, right? It's not there, right? We need to create that integration. We need to make data available. We need to make the departments work together so that we can optimize this. And this is where my story comes from, in the sense that why I say mayor runs a city like this is because he's looking at his city from a rearview mirror. He gets a year-old data, and if that, and he has to make decisions in the future that he will only get feedback on a year later. That's how we run our cities today, like this, right? But what happened in the aviation industry, to bring it back to this story, probably 40 years back, is we brought modern day avionics to the table, right? That's what we put in the planes. They now look like this, right? So modern day avionics transformed the industry, in the sense that now the pilot knows everything, right? Everything on the plane is censored. Like we said earlier, right? Everything in the city will eventually be censored. So you get information real time of what's happening on the plane, but also in and around you, right? You know exactly where you're going because your map is already drawn up for you. You know exactly when you'll get there, right? For the minute you take off, you can tell when you'll arrive. Headwinds, tailwinds, all of the details, whether you'll encounter turbulence, the level you need to fly, everything is there now, right? There are no more questions. And what that's done for aviation is that now we all fly around the world for cheap, right? It's made it accessible to everybody. There are planes everywhere, and it's the safest mode of travel, right? So what we need to do, I'm trying to wrap up. What we need to do is put the avionics in our cities, right? We need to enable them, the mayor to sit in a cockpit like this, right? Actually, can anybody tell me what plane this is? The next one after. 787. That's the Dreamliner. So the Dreamliner now, the 787, actually can take off, fly, and land by itself. Right? The pilot is basically a passenger like all of us, but he gets to sit in front. So and better seat. So that's the advent of machine learning, right? This is what we call AI. I'm not saying that the cities of the future will run themselves, but that's kind of what will happen, right? We'll be there to make decisions, we'll be offered options, and when we apply AI on that, that's when the real transformation needs to happen. But we need to do all the other things first. So, to summarize or close very quickly. So let's plan, let's empower, thank you. That means I did a good job if you remember the word. Let's plan, let's empower, let's change citizens' lives for the better, let's save the planet, and let's be successful, because that is the promise of smart cities, and we can't afford not to be successful. Thank you.
Our next presentation will be given by Dr. Marcus Zepp and Dr. Farshid Kardan. Dr. Marcus Zepp is a professor of urban planning and co-director of the École d'Urbanisme of Paris. Between 2010 and 2015, he was director of the Institute of Urbanism of Grenoble and president of the École Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture of Grenoble also. He holds a PhD in urban sociology from EPFL from 1999 and an HDR from the University Lumière in Lyon. His research focuses on affordable housing in the Middle East, the socio-spatial quality of public spaces and green spaces, the synergy between heritage and urban regeneration, and the dynamics of regionalism and spatial planning. Dr. Farshid Kardan has a background in building urban physics and has been working at the interface between architecture and engineering throughout his academic and professional career. He has a Master of Science in Architectural Engineering, a PhD in Interdisciplinary Architecture from the National School of Architecture in Paris, Paris-Malquais, and the University of Paris-Est. His research and consulting activities focus on built environments through the application and development of high-fidelity, multi-scale computational fluid dynamics. He works on a wide range of subjects, including architectural design, optimization, urban wind solar energy, urban microclimate simulations, pollutant dispersions, among others. He is founder and CEO of Archiflow, a professional services firm that's headquartered in Switzerland that provides engineering, design, planning, and consulting services for all aspects of the built environment. He is currently collaborator as senior scientist at the Wind Engineering and Renewable Energy Laboratory of Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne, and as an adjunct professor at the École des Ponts Paris, Paris Tech. Please help in welcoming our two speakers.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for your presentation. That's a great echo. So we can see that you have a kind of problem with the presentation. So you have a slow motion movies, but I hope that you had a chance actually to take a glimpse in these movies, because you can see here the different environmental challenges related to the urban physics. So these are the European American and the cities in the Middle East, and we see how we have these problems. For example, we have a bridge collapsing because of the different and complicated meteorological phenomena and the wind induced in the US, and then we have this people in Europe almost blown away by wind because there's no comfort and they cannot really walk easily in an urban environment. And then you have this pollutant dispersion on the right side, which develop around the city. Then there are some potential as well as wind energy, which is quite new, I have to say. So, so talking about these challenges, there's a new concept, urban resilience. Urban resilience is the ability to survive, adapt, and then grow, especially when cities facing different chronic stresses and acute shocks. In other words, it means that we have to understand the different problems in the city and find a proper solution for them. So if I'm just talking about the problems and challenges, if you consider just this urban block, we can see that as an example, we have different meteorological phenomena. We have a different wind profile around the farm. We have the rain, snow. Then we have heating and radiation. So the question is that how we can analyze and how we can have this data in order to plan it for future cities. So if I just want to show you how their importance, I'll just give you some examples. For example, urban heat island. This is a new phenomenon these days, which has happened by radiation and which causes a significant overheat and significant increase in temperature in built environment. So as you can see at the right side, these are the pictures that we captured from NASA satellites. So we can see this is the Atlanta city on top. And if you check the bottom picture, you can see that the city centers and the difference of temperature in city centers and in the suburban areas is almost 12 degrees. And this is not just only for Atlanta City in US. And if you go and check, you can see that there's 8 degrees difference reported for Paris, 10 degrees for Beijing, and then 4.4 for Buenos Aires. So this is the kind of problem that we are dealing these days almost everywhere. So going forward and talking about the wind in this damages. We all know that the wind in urban environments is kind of an enemy, it's a foe for building a structure. Just I want to give you some examples to see how important it is. So only in US, in 2017, more than $240 billion reported as disaster to wind-induced damage. So what we have right now and why we cannot really correct these problems is that because right now, currently, architects, urban planners, engineers, they only have the building codes. And eventually these building codes cannot cover this whole problem, complex problem that can come from this different meteorological phenomena, right? And then some very specific buildings, we can bring it to the wind tunnel and then try to test it. But again, it's coming with complication that I'm gonna show you later on. So just talking about another problem is the atmospheric air pollution dispersion. I just arrived to Beirut and I found out that this is a quite big and huge problem even in Beirut. And I just quickly checked and find one of the scientific paper that Beirut actually is one of the most polluted cities in the region, I have to say. And then the question is that how we can analyze this and how we can simulate this dispersion in different time scales and how we can actually provide a solution for that. So again, I want to just show something else because now we're just talking about the challenges, problems, and there are so many other things, but there are still potential as well. For example, let's talk about the natural ventilation. It's reported that in the US, due to the natural ventilation, we can reduce the consumption of a building between 10 to 30%, and it is proven. And so we can consider here wind not as a foe, not as an enemy, but as a friend, because wind can actually make a natural ventilation inside the buildings, inside the urban environments. So, and the last thing, which is quite new, and I'm a kind of expert in this domain as well. I mean, it's the wind turbine, wind energy in urban environments. However, it's a kind of quite complex question because when we're talking about the wind turbines, it's coming with vibration, it's coming with the effect of wake behind the turbines, but there is still some possible way to do. And nowadays, there are so many strategies like building and integrating the wind turbine. As I show you in a World Trade Center at the beginning in Bahrain, that integrate the wind turbine and try to produce the energy. So we discussed about all these challenges, but it's just not all of this. So considering we go back again to our urban block, and if we just divide and dispart the challenges to design, energy, climate, security, and comfort, and then we discussed clearly about the problems and the challenges, and then if we keep continuing, you can see that there's a whole palette starting from understanding snow transport to analyzing the acoustic in our urban environment, or solar energy, to analyzing the solar energy potential in cities, to spreading the fire, maybe in case if there's a kind of attack or something. So the question now is that how we can do this stuff. So at the EPFL, the institute that I'm actually working at as a professor and a scientist, we have we develop different types of equipment, let's say, to analyze this. So the first thing is that we develop, for example, we built, as you can see here, so it doesn't work, the 27-meter measurement tower inside the campus to understand exactly, measure what happened inside the, let's say, urban environment. And then we have the lidars, a kind of based on laser, let's say, yeah, it's a kind of laser equipment that we shoot, and we try to send some pulse and get and understand the different, for example, the humidity in atmosphere, in different height. And then we developed this very expensive drone. We designed and we developed the hardware and software for just flying and capturing and getting the information about that. So, but the question again here is that these are the equipments that we can use for existing built environments. What happens if we want to build or extend the urban environment, if we want to build, if we want to have another building, a new building, what is the impact of this new building on the other buildings? So here the question is that, there are three different approaches for that currently. It's the full-scale measurement. As you can see the stroke here, we can bring the full-scale building probably somewhere and try to analyze, but as we know, it's not possible. So the solution for that, another solution for that is building the wind tunnels, or what we had at EPFL, and try to make models of the building or reduce the scale of the urban environment, and then bring to the wind tunnel and try to understand what happened there. And the third one is the computational fluid dynamics. So computational fluid dynamics give us this opportunity to understand and to analyze this different phenomena, physical phenomena in full scale and virtually. So what I want to show you here is that this is a very complex task, because this, by the way, these movies, actually, this is the simulation that we performed with the most powerful supercomputers, only for this isolated building, and probably this is the most accurate result that we can have in the world. And we have this publication in scientific journals that showing and proving that we did this. And when you check this isolated building, you see that the wind flow comes and it creates a kind of chaotic patterns. And it's even more complex if you have several ones. So based on, according to the Nobel Prize winner, Richard Feynman, he actually described this chaotic pattern, so-called turbulence, as the most important unsolved problem of classical physics. So what we need is not actually, in reality, is not just isolated blocks. We need real cities. We need to perform simulations over cities, and we need something like this probably. But it's very complex. And imagine, back to the first question, if you want to design in city, or if we want to design a building for future, how we can get this? So what we developed recently, we developed a mathematical models, a set of mathematical models from mesoscale to microscale. And these mathematical models, actually, how it works is that we gather all the data around the globe, and then we try to run some simulations at the mesoscale. Then we try to scale it down to the scale of country, to see what happened inside the country, and then we get the information inside the country, and we try to make it, narrow it down to the scale of a city, and even go further to the scale of architecture, and even narrow it down to the scale of object, like wind turbine, let's say here. So the idea was completely clear. And we test and we evaluate what we developed with the experimental data and with the analysis that we did in the field. And we published this data, and we found that this would be probably the future. And only we have, for a period of 1 year, we only had 14% of differences for calculating all the physical variables, including heat, temperature, wind speed, whatever you think, the turbulence, which is quite complex. So then I just want to show you with demonstrate one of our projects that we had with the municipality of La Défense in France. They have now, you probably hear about Brexit and this huge boom happening in France in this business districts called La Défense. And then they have several projects. They want to build several projects, more than 40 skyscrapers only on that region. So the question was for us, how these new buildings can actually influence and impact the future of the city, future of the district, and then the comfort of the people. And what are the future potentials? So what we did, again, we use our methodology. So we use this multi-scale computational fluid dynamics. We modeled the whole city, and we found that the for the future, the dominant wind coming from, for example, west to east, and then we have the average velocity over the city at the height of 20 kilometers, as I said, and then we try to scale down and perform simulations for having and comparing what will gonna happen in future. So if you just check here, we can see that. So at the left side, we have the case 2015, and at the right side, we have the future buildings, case 2030. And we saw that at the center, for example, in future, in future, we will have more problem in terms of comfort. It will be because of the placement, the arrangement of buildings, we will create the canyon, different canyon, and with the velocity of probably 5 square meter, we will multiply this velocity and we will make the pedestrian level quite discomfort. So even though we go further, and one of the questions that they asked was about the pollutant dispersion, and they wanted to see, okay, with the future construction, how that's gonna happen, I mean, how the pollutant gonna evacuate it. So we did a simulation, and as you can see, these are the simulations that we perform again for 2015 at the left and 2030 at the right. And we see just as an example at that point that the velocity and the pollutants gonna come and reach there and somehow stagnated there. So with these tools, actually, with computational fluid dynamics, we can find how we can change the building's configuration and optimize our design in reality. And even though at the center, at the top of some buildings, they had some projects to install wind turbine. They have 2 ideas. They're just consulting with us to install vertical or even horizontal wind turbine, this one, or even the other option. So we studied that and we found out that with data that we extracted, that in 2030, the new buildings that they're gonna build, that region, we cannot really have a proper velocity to install a wind turbine. So they have to optimize the design of urban environment and the buildings and the morphology of the buildings for the future. So at the end, I just want to say we had this old data, and we completely clear that as cities are, evolving almost every day, so the analysis should be continue. It's a permanent process for us. So it's clear that with the better data, we can make better decisions. That's clear. And these data, more accurate these data are, and then we can make better decisions for sure. And then we have more resilient and smarter cities. So the other question is another question which remains that what is another aspect? Because actually, every morning I'm living in Switzerland, in Lausanne. Every morning I'm just waking up, and then there's this small square, public space just next to my place where I live, and I'm just watching people easily sitting, enjoying their life, and there's a kind of incredible mixity, social mixity, and then I ask, okay, with this all high-tech stuff that we develop, is it the only thing that we can do? Can we be assured that, okay, we can bring people and then we can have something perfect with the simulation that we make? And then the question here to answer this question, I just want to wrap up this part of the speech, and then I just want to show you one of the citation of the Jane Jacobs, the activist, journalist, who influenced a lot the urban planning. And actually, she answered this question somehow, and she said, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. So the question is that how we should now involve people to creating and designing the future urban environments. So thank you very much. I want to invite Professor Zeff to continue this discussion and explain more about these concepts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Farshid, for this nice introduction. So my name is Marcus Zepf, and I'm very happy to be here today with you, since it takes 15 years that I come to Lebanon. Maybe you hear my German accent. I come originally from Munich, and now since 15 years, more than 15 years, I take my students to Lebanon for having workshops in different parts of the country. And I got so attached to this country that now I am married to a Lebanese woman, and I have a little son who talks German and Lebanese. And this brings me to my topic. So I would like to put now the people in the center of the question of smart cities. So we learned a lot about technology, and Farshid showed this nice place in Lausanne, which is in front of the town hall. And we can have a lot of simulations, and we can have a lot of technology data, but the problem is that people always do other things that we have planned. So my work is on uncertainty. Maybe you know a little bit about uncertainty in Lebanon. But if you think that you are a champion of uncertainty, you might be wrong, because uncertainty is everywhere. Uncertainty is in Lausanne, uncertainty is in Paris. And so my research field is about how to take uncertainty not as a threat, but as an opportunity. So I work on the urban planning process, and I ask myself, what is the possibility? I even cannot handle it, technology. What is the challenge to identify the needs of the people, which means social ambient patterns, and how can we integrate these elements in a planning process? Fadi told us we have to have a plan. I agree, but the problem is that the plan changes all the time. So maybe when we take this metaphor, which I liked a lot, of the young child playing, it can be an idea for us to say we have to experiment, and what we imagine today will not be the result in 10 years. So this is my research field. So what we need to know is what are people doing in the city and why do they do it? And we have to imagine what will they do tomorrow, which is effectively very difficult. You know it. Lebanon is a country which is very rich of culture, of diversity, and of tradition. So taking into account all these different ways of living is very difficult. But we can do it if we consider what are actually the tendencies. So if you consider, for instance, mobility, there is a big reflection in Europe about soft mobility, which means, for instance, in Paris, you can see now electronic scooters, you can see bicycles, you can see trottinette, I don't know the word in English. You can see roller skates, and all these technological things are free floatings, which means that if you have a smartphone, you can go to a cycle or to a scooter and you can rent it in the street. And then you can go to the next metro station, and then you change your type of mobility. So you can imagine that there is a big variety to move in the city. So we have to understand what are the tendencies, which means that we have to research in a permanent way. So now the big question is, you see in the middle, the temporalities, the times of our ancient ways to do project. You have a political time, which is a very long time. In Lebanon, maybe uninterrupted time of discussion. Then you have a planification time on the regional level or on the country level. You have administrative procedures, and then only you have what we can call the urban project, which starts at the beginning when someone says, I want to do a project, for instance, for a motorway, for a new neighborhood, or for a tramway, etc. And within this phase of the project, we have now to introduce all these needs, all these tendencies of social ambient patterns, which are changing all the time, to realize our project. You can easily imagine that it's nearly impossible. So what we have to do is to change temporalities and to have what I call a permanent process of project, which is never interrupted and which adapts the planning and the project all the time. This is a very tough challenge, because it needs that we change all our instruments of planification, we change our habitudes of budget. We cannot install a budget and we say in 10 years it's ready and then everything, the world is perfect. It will not be perfect, okay? So we have to adapt in a permanent way. Can you change the slide? So now I will give you the example of 3 principles. I have 10, but I have only some minutes to talk. So I choose 3 principles, how we can think in a new way the urban project. First one is called a shared language. Maybe you have heard in the planning discussion, debate often that we need a common language. My postulate is there is no common language. And I think it's a good thing that there is no common language, because when we use words like urban quality, like urbanity and so on, every one of us has a different idea. And we will never have the same idea, which is a good thing. So we should try to learn and understand our different ways of thinking and of speaking, because you know very well that an economist has a type of language, a politician has a type of language, and a planner has a very type of language. And so we have to learn from each other to have 10 minutes. Thank you. What it means. Next, please. So, a second principle is called autopoiese. It's a very difficult Greek word, which means something very simple. It's a concept used by 2 American researchers which observed animal societies like bees or ants, and they saw that these societies have the capacity to reinvent them permanently. If the environment changes, they change their organization. And this is a good idea for our planning process. It means that we have to reinvent every time when we have a new situation of uncertainty. And it gives us the possibility to reinvent. Next, please. So the third principle is that we have to think in a different way the aim of our project. We cannot anymore think our project as a product, like a nice watch or a nice Nike shoe, because the city always changes and it's never perfect. So we have to come from objectives to targets, which means that we have together produce different visions for the future. And we know at the same time, and that's the difficulty when we talk with political decision makers or economic leaders, we have to tell them, you will finance something, which will be never the same as you see today. And it's very important, because then we can go to the adventure and we can see there are different future possibilities. We want to go there. We will maybe be next to it, and this is our target. Please, next. So now I come to the end with the example, because you might ask by now how to do. And if there are experiences, there are. This is a planning process of a city in Norway which is called Hamar. And they started a project to build a public space in the city center, very symbolic public space. And they knew that the society is very different, and if they do a process of participation, they will never have a product. They will never have a project realized. So they asked a Spanish agency, planning agency, to have a 3-year experimental process, and the municipality contracted this agency for a work with the society for 1 million euro. 3 years, 1 million euro. It's not a lot. What did they do? They had 3 elements. They had urban actions, they had urban design physical lab, and digital lab. So I will show you now these 3 elements. First thing was urban actions. You see there are different activities which the agency did with experts. For instance, they made Light Hamar. So they worked with the people of Hamar on the effects of light. They worked on Art Hamar. So they worked with the artists and the people to create art in the city. They worked Play Hamar. They worked with the children to realize experience in the city. All these kind of things to have shared language, to have shared knowledge, and to come together to a target which could be the beginning of a project. We are already in a permanent process. Next, please. Physical lab, second thing. This is a kind of maison de projet. It's a house for the project. It is physical, you see the house. And it's connected to different events, exhibition. Everything we did in the urban action is immediately exhibited. You can visit it. You have interactive interaction, and you can leave your ideas, your traces, and so on. Third thing, please, is the digital lab. And this is the connection of our presentation, high-tech and low-tech. So there we can find all the advances of our technological internet world. So they created a platform, internet platform, connected to several universities in the world. So students from 5 universities in the world worked indirectly on the results of DreamHammer. So they made workshops. So they profited from intelligence coming outside directly and put it in their knowledge system. So, next please. This is the result. It's a master plan after 3 years, which is the starting point of a project. In fact, it's not the starting point, it's the continuity of the work with the society. So what does it mean? Please, the next. It means that they made a lot of communication, but organized communication. You see there are several things: digital database, pictures, movies, drawings, inhabitant statements, research report, paper-based publications, and English and Spanish. Everyone can participate in DreamHamar. Next, please. Next result is the documentation. In French, we say capitalisation, which means that everything which everyone did in the project, is stocked and is the fundament of the new culture of Dreamhammer. Next, please. And there are some pictures, and this is my end, of the urban actions which the experts realized in the real space with the inhabitants. So the expert, the artist, for instance, they did nothing. They only told the people how to paint. They taught the people how to construct. Everything was done by the people. Thank you very much.
So yeah, I just want to mention the last thing. We already put our email addresses. So if you have any questions, we can contact us. Thank you.
So being married to a Lebanese woman, Marcus, did she ever tell you the meaning of the word hamar in Arabic?
Yes, I know.
Just take it.
I heard it a lot.
So thank you very much for your presentations. Really super interesting take on smart cities and really covered, I think, from very different perspectives. Some of the, I think, words or themes that came up in these presentations, I mean, of course, the idea of having a planning strategy, the importance of sustainable development, the necessity of empowering, but at the same time, really integrating somehow data into the different components of city life. At the same time, the understanding of the different environmental challenges from multiple scales, from micro scales to multi-scales, with the use also of data simulations. And really ending, I guess, very strongly with this idea of the importance of uncertainty, of people staying at the center of all of this equation and at the center of this debate on, or let's say this advance of smart cities, the importance of adaptivity and the ability to continue to reinvent and rethink what the city is and is about. My first question actually is directed to Fadi. In what you're discussing, I mean, this is really all very exciting. And for us here being in Beirut, I think it can makes us wonder, like, okay, what can we do? Where can we start? And how can we somehow envision the possibility of, let's say, even a planning possibility for the city? But I would like maybe to ask, should we maybe, in your opinion, be thinking more of a smart city in the context of Lebanon, or rather a smart country? The issue of scale is definitely very important being here. And the idea of having a strong planning strategy might be more effective if it's adopted really at a global scale to start with.
National scale.
National scale, absolutely.
That's actually a very good question. I think that for a country the size of Lebanon, it absolutely makes sense to think of it as a smart country rather than a smart city. If you're going to invest in infrastructure, and if you're going to invest in delivering services, when you have the capability to do it, why not roll it out countrywide, if you can? And it doesn't have to be all at once. It can be starting with a few cities, but if they come together, and if you have a national smart country plan, you can't call it a smart city plan necessarily, I think you can benefit from economies of scale. You can deliver services a little better, more efficiently, and it absolutely makes sense to think of it that way, just because of the scale. Right? I mean, I talk about Sao Paulo, for example, where it's 20 million people. Right. That's a proper city. So Lebanon as a whole is 4 million people. So I think we can look at it that way, and definitely feasible, and it would be a good approach. We just have to plan for dispersed assets, right? Plan for interconnecting agglomerations of people that we would consider cities, obviously, and then make sure that the infrastructure to connect them all is there also. So I think that's one of the issues you have. Obviously, we have in Lebanon is the infrastructure is not ideal, right? Whether it's from a telecommunications perspective or a electricity point of view. So, and we need to solve those things before we think about becoming smart. But at least we can do it in a way where we could potentially leapfrog others, right? Because there's a lot to do in terms of renewing infrastructure. If we're putting new stuff in, let's just make sure we put the right things in that would allow us to develop in the future and to actually potentially leapfrog others.
And in your presentation, Dr. Farshid and also Dr. Marcus, this issue of both, understanding somehow low tech, understanding the importance of focusing on people, but also integrating high tech. I mean, this is definitely a necessity, right? We cannot start to be thinking about a smart city without actually really also looking at what the city is for or what is it about. But I'm really actually interested in this concept of, again, the low tech. It seems like with great advances in society, great advances in technology, there's always this moment of somehow looking back, looking at history or other previous references where things a bit made more sense. And when we're talking about environmental challenges and better design approaches for better cities, looking at passive systems and low-tech options is definitely key to learn. I'm really interested, how do you see this happening currently in this outlook for smart cities? Is it happening more often? Is it being looked at really systematically?
So yeah, to answer this question, I have to say it really depends on the context, first of all. So I believe that it should be a complementary. We cannot really avoid high tech and then say that okay, the low tech is the solution. And at the same time, we cannot say that the low tech is the solution and we cannot deal with the high tech because it's out of the range. No, I don't believe this, actually. I think it should be complementary, first of all. And it really depends on the context. If we're talking about, for example, a project that we had in a collaboration with Stanford University, we studied the potential of installing wind turbines and the districts at San Francisco Bay. And then for that context, we really need to understand what is going on in terms of environmental, meteorological phenomena, let's say. And then for that context, we can go with the high tech and offering and analyzing the situation and coming with a solution for that. And to be honest, we had actually very good results at the end because we found that in several places in San Francisco, there's a huge potential to installing wind turbines. And now, after 2 years, they already installed in 2 main streets on top of the building of 2 main streets in San Francisco. So back to your question again, I really believe that it should be complementary, and this will be the future for all cities. But as Fadi said, we need to prepare the infrastructure and context. We cannot use the same technologies that we use, for example, in one of these megapole, let's say, like San Francisco, and do it at the place and the region that we don't have really the necessary infrastructures. Yeah.
And maybe a last question from my part, but then we will open the question for the audience. Just really to go to this issue of uncertainty, because even in like the example that you gave for Dream Hamar, Still, the approach is somehow, looking at, even though it is a bottom-up approach, right? So the people are part of this, but there is somehow a top-down, planning of dividing the strategy into these three components that are adopted. So I guess in what way would the complete uncertainty, complete variables in the future, could they be part actually of the city's development?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I think, as you stated also for the high-tech and low-tech approach, we cannot have totally chaos planning. It's not possible. But it's very important that the planning process gives the possibility for times where we can stop, where we can think, where we can integrate new ideas coming from the people. And this means a learning process. It means a learning process from the one hand from the people, from the members of the society, so that they learn how they can integrate and what do they have to do to take part in the planning process. And it takes also a learning process from the actors who are leading the project, means politicians, means the planners, means the economic actors, and that they are willing to take these ideas not as an interruption or as a disturbing element, but that they accept that this can give a new direction, and that is a kind of experimentation which leads in the end to a new vision of a certain space in the city. So I'm not talking about taking down all the traditional processes, but to adapt them, that they can evolve and take into account new situations.
Any questions? Please, Naib. تفضل.
Yes, thank you. Well, speaking about smart cities, very often people insist on the technological aspect. The fact that, well, with smart cities, you can have, sort of getting information about every person, about every dweller, where he is, what he does, where he lives, what are his, etc., etc. This is frightening, because you can easily get into a sort of George Orwell type of thing, or Aldous Huxley, Brave World. So, in order to, but it's a reality. I mean, when you think that such technological instruments in the hand of type of, dictatorship, I mean, can become really very dangerous. So it's very important to insist on the fact that for cities to be smart, there is a need to have real participation of the population, of the dwellers, in the decisions, in the political choices. Finally, it's very important to develop democracy. I mean, without democracy, you don't have smart cities. You can end up into dictatorship.
So, can I address that? Do I need to get closer? Make sure. So that's a very important point. Right? There's a few things in what you said that kind of jump out at me. The first one is obviously privacy. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm afraid that ship has sailed. Your Orwellian future, I think we're pretty much headed towards that. So if you look at how we interact, something as basic as our smartphones today, right? We download an application and it asks for access to your pictures, your location, your phone calls, your every access, and we click yes, no problems, give me the app, right? So ultimately, and I think for older generations, privacy is a big issue, right? Because we're used to our privacy, we want our privacy. For younger generations, I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue, to be honest. So for the government to know where you are all the time, or to track you, or to know what you're buying on Amazon, or what's being shipped to you, or what have you, that we have to assume that that will be the case, and it will be the case, unfortunately. That's not really what scares me. What scares me more, and I think where we need to be much more careful, is around AI. So machine learning and machines taking over at some point, hopefully not. But the idea is that eventually machines will become much smarter than humans. They will make better decisions, and we will want them to make these decisions. However, one acronym that really scares me is law. Right? Not the law, which I love the law, but law, which stands for lethal automated weapons. So that's when AI gets dangerous, right? Robots that have the power to kill, drones that are automated that have the power to kill, but it's not a human making that decision, it's a machine. So, those things start to scare me. And when I look at what we are already today capable of, for example, in Dubai, there was a very innovative company that came in and did a light show based on about 1,000 mini drones that went up and created the illusion of fireworks using lights. Now, to think that these drones can actually interact together in that way, they're not being controlled, right? This is all pre-programmed, but they interact together in a way that no human could ever reproduce, right? These machines know where the other drones are, they know where to position themselves at all time, they're sensing everything, and they're flying with precision. Right? Now imagine the weapons we can develop with that, unfortunately. So these are the kind of, and again, unfortunately, I think those are already being developed. We don't know about them. So that's what really scares me. It's not a privacy issue. I think, again, a ship sailed. But what comes after that, that's scary.
The issue of privacy is not the main issue. The problem is that when they have information about you, about what you do, about etc., they can orient your choices. They can influence you. And this is, this is very
that's not
dangerous.
doing that.
This is very, no, I know. When I say they, I'm not speaking about government. I'm speaking about all the economic, financial, etc., corporations, powers, and this is very dangerous.
So corporations are doing that.
This is very dangerous.
So behavior modeling and understanding pattern usage patterns and things like that. So obviously, Amazon has that down to an art form today. Right? They know how to make you buy something, how to orient your decisions in their favor. In fact, they have something as basic as price manipulation happening. So they have different pricing showing on different browsers to different people based on who you are and how bad you want the product, right? So yes, it's a challenge, but unfortunately, it's the world we'll be living in until it gets regulated.
Yes, if I just can say one word about the topic you're entering here, I think we have to think of the next generation. So I see my students which start to have alternative use of the internet. So for instance, I have students, they don't use Google anymore. And they have parallel ways to have access to information. And when I see my son, he is 4 years old, he plays on the tablet. And they have this new generation has a new ability to understand networks and information that I think we don't have to be fatalist. We have to be very, very concerned. But we have to think for the next future and for their ability to have an autopoietic system.
Excuse me?
Please, there's a question.
في question هون. I have priority. I have the microphone. My name is Zaina Nazir. I'm a researcher and smart mobility expert from University of Southampton in the UK. So my PhD is on autonomous vehicles. I don't know where we are. I mean, I know Fadi spoke about AI, you spoke about what the amazing work IBM are doing. So I would love to know from the IBM smart city that I'm familiar with because I work with IBM. Give me some application in Lebanon, but please focus on mobility because that's my specialty, transport. And Marcus and Farshid, from your experience, I know you talked a lot about people involvement, and I just came back from Singapore, and I see that basically the people, I mean, here we can just complain about the government. I was in this conference last year talking about transportation, and since last year the transport has been worse. It didn't get better. So, I mean, let's not keep talking and complaining about government. Let's see what, from your experience as an expert, as people, what can we do to improve our transportation? I mean, just to focus the question. Thank you.
That's a good question. So here's my perspective on that. First thing I would do to fix the transportation problem in Lebanon is paint lines on the road. Okay, and make sidewalks, because automated vehicles don't work if there are no lines. Right? So there's a lot to do here in Lebanon in particular to fix this problem. I keep out the lines, but it is actually necessary for a vehicle to see the lines if it's going to drive itself. Right? So things like that, we need more organization around the road structure before we can think about solving these problems and about adding any kind of technology on top of this. And I think that's our challenge in Lebanon. Right? It's the infrastructure story again. Whether it's telecom, where we're far behind everyone else from just a connectivity, a speed of connection point of view, or whether it's electricity or roads. Right? We need the basics to be in place, and we need to focus on that first, unfortunately, before we can really think about how we add technology on top of it.
So just want to say something about the question that you asked. I think, okay, what we can do from my perspective, working with the computational fluid dynamics of transportation and mobility has several aspects. One of them that I realized here in Lebanon, although I've just been here for two days, not more than this, is that the noise, the creating these huge amounts of noise, which really is really bothering, I have to say. So what we can do with the science that we developed, and we were working on it, is that we can actually now simulate the acoustic performance of the, let's say, transportation axis. And we can understand, okay, how this noise, bothering noise again, it can be controlled, and how we can optimize the roads, how we can make this the transportation and this, let's say, a side effect can be optimized, in fact. So with the computational fluid dynamics, today we can really understand how these noise sources can be controlled, even if they are the cars. So we can, for example, build some barriers to control it, to keep it. So from my perspective, that could be an answer for that. So here again, just science can help, I think. Simulations can help to optimize the design, optimize the situation at the end.
And I want to give you just one example. I have made a research on the bicycle network for public use in France. In 2000, in none of the metropoles in France, there was bicycle use. And then came a little startup enterprise in Lyon, and they thought maybe it would be interesting to install free bicycles to rent in the city. Shortly after, this enterprise was caught up by a big society, And they not only installed it in Lyon, but they installed it in several metropolis. And now we have Vélib in Paris. And we are at the second generation of Vélib. And it has become such an important method of movement in the city that the mayor of Paris now can say in 2025 there will be no more cars in the city of Paris without having people shooting her. Because it has become a common culture to use these things alternatively to metro and private cars in the city. So we have 18 years and we have a big cultural change. But it comes all out of experimentation.
Can I add something? I'm a little bit bold by nature and sometimes controversial, but if the transportation problem was given to me to solve, probably the first two things that I would do in Lebanon in particular. One is, I think we need to address the old cars on the road. Right? I mean, the air quality in Lebanon, or in Beirut in particular, is just horrible. I'm just driving here from the hotel, you couldn't breathe in traffic. That's because there are too many old cars that are, spewing toxic fumes and making it impossible for us to breathe. There's a big price to pay for that. I think we need to take care of that. Now, if I was running the city or the country, I would first put in place a proper transit or public transit system. So put buses on the roads and things like that. And eventually start to phase out those old cars, right? That's a first step. And then those people that are using those old cars can start to migrate to the public transit network. Bicycles would be great. I'm not sure I would drive a bicycle on the roads of Beirut, but it would be great if we were, maybe in 20 years we can make that happen, but there has to be a first step, and I think we need to address it. Air pollution, which is really bad, and we need to address those older cars that cause the pollution, and we need to put in place an alternative. A start, at least. I'm not saying build a metro, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but put buses on the road, right, that get people from point A to point B. And we can run a simulation to see where those buses would have most usage. Right? So.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so actually I will just take one last question.
I got the microphone, so I got two quick questions. The first one to Mr. Zef. Given that such a concept needs political will, and we have lack of it in Lebanon. I mean, you can see we had two MPs didn't have the time just to listen to our presentation here. So we need legislation to push such a concept. How do we deal with politicians who are not very interested, who do not have the political will to push such a concept? My second question is to Mr. Atallah, and I would like to elaborate further on what Mr. Tabit said. In a democratic country, the ship has sailed. It's not a problem. Why? Because in Canada, let's say Jim Watson, mayor of Ottawa, breaches my privacy. You from IBM breach my privacy. I take you to court. Problem solved. In Lebanon, people might die. People might get kidnapped. It might change political landscapes. So my question is to you personally, what can companies like IBM do so that concepts like smart cities, rather than them becoming, a blessing, that, we have a real issue that they might become a curse on citizens. And especially with AI, and you know how AI works, AI is monitoring people 24/7. They have, this big data getting from, entire cities. So rather than, pushing democracy forward, that becomes a curse. Thank you.
So thank you for this question. Political will, very important question. But politicians, what do they want? They want to be re-elected. So if the inhabitants, the citizens, have initiatives which grow, they have to look at it. And then they have to consider it, whether they want or they don't. So you are the young generation, you are younger than me, and it's up to you to create and to enhance such experiments, which will become more and more visible, and the politician cannot look aside. That's my conseil.
Your comment?
Second part of the question, okay. So you talk about breach of privacy and those kinds of, so listen, it's not just a free-for-all, right? People don't just have access to your information. So the way we build our databases today, the way we manage data, there are the right security measures in place to make sure that your data is not accessible to just anyone. I don't know about a mayor of a city, but no one can just easily access your data. That being said, it's not impossible. Right? And eventually we will be monitored everywhere we go, and that data will be stored somewhere, and somebody somehow can have access to it. I think going forward, the reality of life in the future is going to be, if you do something wrong, you're going to have to work really hard to cover it up. Okay, it's just that simple. It's not like it was. So if you're doing the right things, do you care if you went to if somebody knows what time you go to the groceries or what time you wake up in the morning and start using your phone, or what you bought from this site or that site? You might, but it's not the end of the world. The reality is, if you're doing bad things, that's when it's going to become a lot more difficult to keep your privacy. Okay. So that's political targeting.
If you have a contract on the line too, right?
So it is. I mean, this is the challenge we have in this new world, right? If you want to target your opponent in any way, you probably can. If a government that's in place wants to stay in place, they could probably dissuade a lot of people from doing anything to remove them. That's the bad thing, right? How do we solve for that? I really don't know. That's an issue we're going to have to somehow address.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much. We're running short on time, and there's another panel, so there's a 15 minutes break now, and hopefully the rest of the questions will be answered in the 2 coming days. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're running against the clock.
That's okay. Good question.